Okay, so there's a problem with Project 5 in that when you're first using InDesign, when you bring in an image specifically from Illustrator, it comes in really pixelated and ugly. So I'm going to show you maybe how to first colorize this image in Illustrator. Vector graphics are really, really sharp. Might do it there. And they also are resolution independent, meaning you don't need pixels. I'm going to open InDesign, or I'm sorry, Illustrator. I'm going to create a new file, File, New. And I'm going to do this thing called image trace, which is either God's gift to designers, or if people don't use it correctly, it just looks like the devil's work. So this is a great thing, and it can be an awful thing. It depends on who's behind the wheel. You know, Lamborghini is only as good as the driver. So I'm going to go to File and Place here in Illustrator. Again, I'm in Illustrator right now. I'm going to do some graphics, manipulation of graphics. And I'm going to find my little T that I created that was my TIFF, and I'm putting him in Photoshop. Place him. Now he's 1200 pixels per inch. That might give Illustrator a run for its money. We'll increase him in size. Now in Illustrator, I can hold down Shift and make him bigger. I don't have to hold down Shift and Command. So some of you guys who are into that shift and drag to get bigger, I know where you got it. You got it from other software. In InDesign, we have to hold down Shift and Command. But we're in Illustrator, so I can just shift and drag. I'm just making it big because I like working big. Now I want to convert this to something I can manipulate. So I am going to go to, let me click on him. I'm going to go to Image Trace right here. And I like doing custom image tracing. There's a little arrow off to the side, but custom is grayed out. On a black and white graphic like this that's pretty sharp, that doesn't need a lot, I can oftentimes get away with letting the computer make a choice for me. I'll choose black and white logo. It will image trace it beautifully. If it doesn't and I don't like what it has, I may adjust those image trace options. It's a little bumpy in here, so I want to clean that up. So I'm going to hit Command Z. If you want to do a custom image trace and control the quality, that's under Window and Image Trace. This is where your custom options are. That custom was grayed out and it doesn't tell you where to get it, but I'm telling you now, here's where you get it. Window, Image Trace. Let me get these guys out of the way. So here's Image Trace. Now, when I do a custom image trace, I click on Preview. That'll show me what I get. I still have some wonkiness going on in there. I want to click on the advanced options so that I can control how tight it is to my path, how tight it is to the corners, that kind of stuff. So maybe for the path, I put it on low. You'll notice how it's more tolerant and loose. So I want it to fit to the path in a lower way versus a higher way. A higher way will give me exactly those rough edges. Maybe I want to smooth it out, so I'm going to take it to low. If I take it down to all the way low, it might be too much. So you just do this until it looks good. This is what Preview is for. Now curves or corners, you know, how sharp do you want them? Do you want more corners or less? Well, this is a fairly smooth object. I'm going to take it down just a little bit. Corners or less. Noise is, you know, if you have a scan that you've got here and it's got a little too many pixels hanging around, you can adjust that too and take some of that noise out. So as soon as you like what you have, in essence, Preview is the same thing as tracing, and you just close it and it's traced. Okay? Now I want to show you the before and after. Let me place the original, and we'll show you the difference between a vector graphic and a raster graphic. The raster graphic is pixelated. It's made of pixels. You can see the edges are kind of frayed because it's all pixelated. And here is a vector graphic. It's smooth and creamy like Jif peanut butter. Smooth as chocolate pudding. Very different kind of graphic. Raster graphics use pixels, no mathematics, other than how many pixels per inch. And vector uses curves and paths and it uses lots of mathematics regarding where the X and Y axes are. Now, if I want to color this, I can't do it until I expand the image. And when I expand it, it'll break it down into parts and pieces. So assuming I have this image selected that I've image traced with the selection tool, I hit expand. And what it's going to do is it breaks it down into individual paths and parts and pieces. Now, one thing that I always have to do here, assuming I didn't check any weird boxes in my trace option, is I have to get rid of the white box that's around this. Let me show you what I mean. I'm going to put a color box in here. Let me fill it with a color, and I'm going to send it to the back. You see there's a white box around that T. I don't want that because in my InDesign file, I have a tan area, and I don't want a white box there. I just want it to go show right through, okay? So what I need to do, let me get rid of this red box because I don't need it anymore. That was just to show you that there's a white box there. What I need to do is get my direct selection tool, the white arrow tool, not the black arrow tool. This is really important to use the right tool. I will click out somewhere pretty far away from the graphic in the white area, and I will drag over where I know the box is. I don't touch any color. I just grab where I know the box is. I hit delete once, I hit delete again. Now let me show you what's going on here. I'm going to draw another box, send it to the back, and you can see that there's no longer a box of white behind that T. I don't want that to have white. Okay? So when you expand something, you always want to delete that white box that was around the scan. Now I can go in here and I can color some things, whatever colors I want. Maybe I want them red, and I want to probably be pretty consistent. Maybe all these white areas are going to be red too. So I can go in there and click and make things certain colors. Now this is not the most exciting Illustrator initial, so I'm not getting crazy here. I want to be consistent. I suppose I could make the center part a different color. Maybe it's not green. No, that'll be silly. I don't want red and green. That looks like Christmas. And you have to kind of look for little stragglers too. Little things like this guy right here. Sometimes I delete them. Sometimes I have to fill them in. But I'm using the white arrow tool when I'm doing this because I'm dealing with individual little parts and pieces. So sometimes I can get rid of parts. Maybe this, excuse me. Maybe this area here, I want it to be orange. Now this is not normally how I would color something. I'm just having a good time here. Orange. Ooh, I like that gradient. That looks kind of nice. Maybe I should have done some gradients on the other stuff. Okay, so let's pretend this is nice and clean. It's not all the way clean. I would clean up these little white pieces, but let's pretend it's clean and ready to go. What we typically do is, this is not in the instructions because I wasn't ready to really talk about Illustrator. I don't think it's in here. It states that we have to do raster graphics a certain way. It doesn't really talk about vector graphics here at all. And what we're working on right now is a vector graphic. So I will tell you, it's not in writing, but I will tell you that a vector graphic here needs to be saved as, let me make sure I'm in Illustrator, saved as, for industry standard, we typically save them not as AI files, which stands for Adobe Illustrator, but in the format we save them as Adobe Illustrator EPSs. And I usually rename it something other than Untitled. This is called the Illustrated T, and it's an EPS. And I save that. Now, this little window here gives us a little clue about the quality we're going to get, which is a problem in InDesign initially. In InDesign, when I place this, it's going to place it in preview format as an 8-bit color TIFF, which 8-bit is a very low-bit graphic. So you don't have any other options that are even better than that. You have worse, which would be black and white. And I don't want to see black and white. I want to see color. So, and you do want it transparent, and by default that should be set. So I really don't need to change anything here in the EPS options. I just hit OK. And it's saving it as an EPS file right now. And it's a fairly big image right now too, so I'm going to resize it. The Illustrator files, you can resize them all day long. Big, small, it doesn't matter. They never pixelate. Now I'm going to go to InDesign, and I am going to go to File and Place, and I'm going to grab this graphic, my illustrated TEPS, open it, and place it. Holy cow, that's huge! I know! It's gigantic. So hold down Shift and Command if you're in InDesign, and we resize it. Okay, so this one's a little bit prettier than the other one that I had. I think it is prettier, don't you guys think? I think it's nicer. Compared to the one I had, it's, I think, pretty awesome. I mean, and I didn't even try. Just a little color goes a long way, doesn't it? So I'm getting him roughly in the same position as the last guy. Now, I want to get rid of the last guy, but I don't want to necessarily move him out of the way. You can click through the layering by holding down the Command key, and it'll click on the next most object. If you don't believe me, I'm going to move it. There he is. Oh my gosh. So holding down the Command key can click through to the next object. Like, I'm going to delete him, and I'm going to put a, we definitely need to put that text wrap back on this guy. He was just the bounding box, and we unchecked that, and we took that up. Whoops, other way. There we go. Okay, I'm happy now. Now, what Sepida has is a problem where, gosh, it didn't do it. Her display, well, it probably did. Hold on. Woo! Let me zoom in. The display performance looks kind of crappy. This mouse, I need to fix it. It's got like all sorts of weird boxes and pixels in there, and you're like, well, this is a vector graphic. It's not supposed to have that. It's supposed to be super sharp and clean. Well, this is that 8-bit pixel preview that it's saved in just for placement. This is so the computer works faster. But if it drives you nuts and you want to see what you're going to get when you print, right-click with the black arrow tool, get the black arrow tool, right-click on that graphic and go to Display Performance, which is 3 items up from the bottom. So that was a right-click on the image with the black arrow tool, go to Display Performance, and use High Quality Display. And what, oh, look at that. That changed a lot. Okay, so it's going to slow the computer down just a little bit when I'm working in InDesign, but not tremendously. So some people really do like to make sure they're working with high quality display so they can make sure that there's no craziness with their graphics. This looks a lot better than what I had before, which looked like that. That's an 8-bit pixel preview. So Illustrator said, hey, I'm going to save your preview that you're going to place in InDesign as an 8-bit pixel preview. Well, there's 8-bit pixel preview. But when we do the display performance at high quality, it looks so much better. So that was a very good question that you guys had about, hey, why are my images looking all yucky? And if it doesn't solve that problem, if they still look yucky, then they're probably too low resolution. Then you got to get some new images. All right. Any other questions? I do want to share with you one last thing. Let's say for some reason, I'm not sure what reason that would be right now, but let's say just for some reason on this G, on the word graphic, I wanted to change this stroke right here, and I wanted to pull it or move it or whatever. Or maybe on the P or the H or whatever. Well, right now this is a grouped object. When you guys are in grouped objects and you want to just isolate one of the objects, double click on the spot where the object is and it will isolate it. It's still grouped, but it isolates it temporarily so that you can work on it. So when you have grouped objects, you may have to double click on them to get them kind of temporarily ungrouped. But you guys can play with type and modify it a little bit. I wouldn't go crazy on it, but you can modify it if you want to feel a little artistic and a little creative. But let's say I wanted to convert this type to outlines and then modify it. I can go to Type and Create Outlines. It is now a vector path. If I choose my white arrow tool, you'll see that vector path. It looks a lot like the path in Illustrator. Now I can use, again, my white arrow tool, not the black arrow tool. I'm going to deselect the object and I'm going to hover over the point that I want to choose, I click on it, I let off the mouse, I hold the shift key, I click on the next one and let off the mouse, and then I drag this, maybe I hold down the shift key, and I decided to make my G have a much longer horizontal finishing stroke. I don't know why I would do that, but sometimes it's something interesting to do. So if you guys want to modify type, for instance, like arts, maybe you want the T to start pulling out, going to the right here. I want to extend its base. I go to type, create outlines. I get my white arrow tool. I click on one node. I hold down the shift key, click on another node, let off of the shift key, let off the mouse, then go back to one of the nodes, start pulling it, but hold down shift so it stays in perfect position. So I just kind of monkeyed around with my typography in kind of a fun way. So you guys can alter typography by converting it to outlines and moving nodes around. It is a little challenging. I wouldn't go crazy on curved shapes like the C. You know, I usually do straight objects, things that are kind of straight. Anything curved, if I try to modify it, it looks like I've modified it. It looks bad. So you have to be careful about those things. Okay. I just placed this Gutenberg image just to kind of put him in here to rest on that T. And I don't want him necessarily to, be clear like this. I'm like, Gutenberg, what are you doing to me, man? You're all clear, and I want you to be just white behind you, you know? I don't want tan. Does anybody know what I would do to make Gutenberg have white behind him instead of tan? What is up with this mouse? Does somebody have a remote control mouse and they're messing with me? Happens every once in a while. It's pretty funny. What would I do if I wanted white behind him instead of clear see-through? He's a line art bitmap TIFF, so everything, you know, tends to be see-through. What would I do to make him white back there?
Draw a white box.
Seppi just says, hey, why don't you just draw a white box, same size or shape, and fill it with white and send it to the back. You could do that, but it's a little extra. So I would go Object, Arrange, Send Backwards. Okay, there's that. Now, that's extra steps I don't want to take, though. So, gosh darn this. Who is messing with me?
Sorry.
That's all right. If you got a remote control mouse and you're messing with me, I know you're not aiming to, but if you are, it's still funny. So this guy here, instead of drawing a white box, I can actually go here to the Swatches panel, and because I have the black arrow tool used, this will affect the box color, not the actual color of the artwork. I can say, hey, fill him with paper color, which is white. Okay, I did not have to draw an extra box. If I grab him with the white arrow tool, I can make him his actual image any color I want. Okay, so white arrow tool deals with the contents inside the box, and meaning like the artwork itself. Black arrow tool just deals with the box. I wish I had a sketch like you guys. You guys know exactly what you're doing with your designs. I have no idea. I'm sitting here guessing and just putting things in as I go. And it's much better when you have a plan and a sketch, isn't it? Because then you know where everything's going and you don't have to struggle with trying to design and do the software at the same time. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do for the rest of the class period, I'm going to have you guys work. And that gives you an hour, a little less than an hour. I do want you guys to actually work and stay here if you can for the most of the duration if you can, because then if you guys have questions, I'm here to help you. If you go home and you try to get a hold of me, well, I'm home too, and I'm not checking my email every 5 minutes. So it's best for you to get me while I'm here. So I can answer any of your questions that you need me to answer.